Shalom. Today we're going to look at Parsha Vahera. Parsha Vahera is a Parsha that means "and I appear." It's taken from the book of Exodus chapter 6, verse 2, all the way to chapter 9, verse 35. This is a Parsha portion that's going to be read throughout the world. In this Parsha, we are going to experience the redemption and the deliverance of Elohim. Yahweh is promising his deliverance to the people, and he mentioned how he has heard their groaning and that he was going to accomplish 4 levels of redemptive acts for the people. For each of these acts of deliverance written in the book of Exodus chapter 6, beginning from verse 6 to all the way to 7, Yahweh uses these expressions. 1, I will bring out. 2, I will rescue. 3, I will redeem. And 4, I will take. These 4 promises are called the 4 expressions of redemption, and they are traditionally commemorated during the Passover Seder meal with 4 cups of wine. Yahweh also makes the 5th expression of redemption, where he says he will bring his people back to their own land. In verse 8 it reads that I will bring you into the land I swore with uplifted hands that I will give to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. I will give it to you as a possession. I am Yahweh. Although Yahweh has been rescuing the Jewish land, the 5th cup is also considered to be a cup of redemption through Messiah, where we'll all get to the promised land, to the wonderful by and by. Israel will be delivered. That's an interesting thing to realize, that that's going to happen. We will also be delivered. So despite what Israel is going through these days, despite the challenges with Hamas, there's a day of deliverance coming. There's a difference between burden and there's a difference between bondage. It is worse to be in bondage. A man might carry his own burden willingly, but it's more difficult to carry it under the compulsion of another. That's when it becomes bondage. Yahweh told Moses that in addition to taking Israel out from under the burden of Egypt, he was going to deliver them from bondage. There are different types of bondages. Some might find themselves taken into literal bondage, like the Jewish and the Sabbatarian community during the World War II, or even currently the persecuted Jewish church, or the persecuted church in Christians in Sudan and some other part of Asia. They are in troubled situations, constantly facing persecutions. Others find themselves in self-made bondages. It's easy to give oneself up to financial bondage, especially in these days of competition. There are other bondages, like rent being overdue. We know as a family what it is to go through such bondages, and a lot of other persons have known what it is during the COVID period. Sometimes we fall into the bondage of our appetite and eventually find ourselves loaded by addictive behavior like chemical abuse, drug, alcohol, nicotine, or even the sin of gluttony and sexual immorality. These are bondages that run down even to generational lines. When a person is unable to exercise self-control over his own behavior, he is a person that is in bondage. This can be self-bondage or demonic. For example, many persons have made New Year resolutions on habit that they know is either unnecessarily affecting their finances, unnecessarily affecting their health, unnecessarily affecting their family. And they know that it's bad. Not long now into the year, people have done New Year resolutions. But the question is, are these resolutions still standing? The fact that they are going back to it shows that they are in bondage. But worry not, because Yahweh is willing to redeem you. When a person is unable to liberate himself or herself, that person needs someone outside to deliver them from that bondage. That's why people who struggle with addiction find their best success when they turn to counseling, support groups, or other systems of accountability. It takes someone outside the situation to intervene. And in this case of our partial reading, Yahweh appears. Yahweh is able to intervene and release us from the various bondages that tackles us. through faith in Yahusha, our chains are falling away. In the this is one of the passages that is being read during the Passover, and during the Passover meal, there's a part for storytelling called the Haggadah, and there's a song there which is very popular, the Havadimayunu. It's an expression of joy, and then it says we were slave, now we are all free people. Through Messiah Yahusha, we can be set free from the slavery of sin. Yahusha teaches us that everyone who sins is enslaved by it, and that person is unable to set themselves free, but it takes His grace, His love, and connection through Him to set us free. And that freedom or that bondage is sometimes doesn't even have anything to do with us. Sometimes it's even generational. Now let's move back to the parasha portion. The parasha portion, we see an attitude that makes people not to be able to heed to the voice of warning and get delivered or save themselves. Pride. A lot of families have broken down because of pride. A lot of relationships today are broken down because of pride. A lot of situations that could have been resolved amicably are broken down because of pride. Pharaoh remained prideful despite the marvels and the wonders of Elohim. When COVID came, a lot of persons saw what was happening, but they had to conceptualize things, give it biological interpretation, scientific interpretations, and that did not connect them to Yahweh. Elohim gave Moses and Aaron a special sign to show Pharaoh. The Hebrew word for sign is mophet, which means a marvel, which means a wonder. This justifies the statement that signs are made for unbelievers. When they see the signs, they will believe. Sad enough, because we haven't come to believing, even those who are believers are still seeking signs. Aaron was to throw his stick down before Pharaoh as part of those signs, and it will transform into something. Now, in most English translation, we read that the stick became a serpent. But in the Hebrew word, the word used is tanin, which means monster or crocodile. Which brings me also to talk about maybe Leviathan was also the word there, where it says a Leviathan, that snake, that serpent, that ancient, that fleeing serpent. But as Pharaoh heard the word, he did not change. Saw the signs, he did not change. Yahweh foreknew that Pharaoh was still going to refuse to let the people go. So he sent more judgment and he sent more plagues. These plagues are remembered issued during the Passover Seder, during the second cup of wine. One drop is removed from the cup for each of the plagues while the leader recites the list of judgment that are coming or that were there. Why do we do that? We do that because our joy cannot be complete while we are still suffering. And I think it's a mentality we need to take, that while we are in this world, we need to be humble enough. We need also to be prayerful enough for His mercies to be. We need to remember those who are suffering in bondage and make intercession for them. Now, we saw that the Nile was turned to blood, making it undrinkable. Then frogs swamped the land. Then infestations of lice tormented man and beast. Of course, that could be interpreted to mean global warming, things happening in water bodies, creatures taking over infestations of different kinds. But those things didn't change Pharaoh until the plague of lice came. The Egyptian sorcerers and magicians were unable to duplicate this. And that's why they recognized that it was a finger of Elohim. There's a stage where the world will come to realize, or the sorcerers will come to realize, that their limit has changed. Today, with advanced technology, we can interpret everything scientifically and medically. But the time is coming where the narrative is going to be recognized for what it is. This parasha reminds us that as family, we need to trust that Yahweh's process of healing and deliverance Things can take some time. Pharaoh had hardened his heart and would not listen to the voice of reasoning. That was one of the surest signs of pride. A humble man will receive instruction, but a man of pride will immediately become defensive and will not listen to others. That's one way of recognizing rebellion in a family. When somebody is not defensive, when somebody is very defensive, that's rebellion. And sometimes it's either spiritual or it's something to teach us to humble ourselves. When a child begins to portray defensive behavior, we need to check ourselves. Are we also being defensive before Yahweh? Because sometimes Yahweh uses children to turn us back to his way. Pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. Interestingly, let's note the contrast between Pharaoh and Moses. And even today, Moses is being considered as the most humble man to walk on earth. When Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, corrected him, he listened about his approach to settling dispute between Israelites in the wilderness. Eventually, Pharaoh promised to let the people go after the plagues of lice as a result, but he changed his mind. Elohim then had to send swarms of flies that covered the land, then a disease that killed the cattle. In all of these things, Yahweh made a distinction between Israel and Egypt. While all the cattle of Egypt died, not even one of Israel's cattle fell to the disease. This underlines the importance and reliability of being in a covenant relationship with the Almighty Elohim. None of Egypt's best sorcerers and masters of the occult could save them from the hand of Yahweh. This is very serious. The same way, if today we are not in covenant relationship with Yahweh, and we are boasting in our finances, our social network, our skills, our resources, it's only a matter of time that once the hands of Yahweh got unleashed, we begin to wonder what has happened. 5 plagues. Pharaoh still hasn't let the people go. In the 6th plague, when Elohim turned dust into a painful boil upon man and beast in Egypt, even the magicians suffered it, and they could not stand before Pharaoh. This week, Parsha will end with the 7th plague, the plague of hail. Yahweh sent thunder, fire, and a grievous hail that destroyed anything and everything in the field. Man, beast, vegetation. Only in Goshen did Israel leave that there was no hail. Egypt, like the world today that we are living in, and we need to make sure that we're in covenant relationship because Yahweh's judgment is coming. When we read the book of Revelation, we see that many of the plagues will again strike the inhabitants of the earth. And that's going to happen in the end times. The events that happen in Egypt are foreshadows of things to come, possibly on a global scale in the final days. John described the 7 plagues on the earth, where it says that I saw another sign in heaven, great and marvelous. 7 angels were sending plagues, for in them is filled the wrath of Elohim. Revelation chapter 15, verse 1. So as Elohim pours out the full bowl of his wrath upon the earth, loathsome sores appear on all those who have taken the mark of the beast and worship his image. Then, just like in Egypt the water turned to blood, Revelation chapter 16, verse 3 to 6, other plagues are bombarded on earth, such as darkness, scorching fire, destructive hail from the sky, huge hailstone, each weighing about 100 pounds, fell on people and they cursed Elohim on account of the plague of hail, because it was so terrible. May we be ever mindful that we are living in the end times while we remain safe in the security of our holy covenant with Elohim. Let us patiently share the good news and diligently pray for mercy upon those who stubbornly continue to rebel against Elohim. We also have our own level of stubbornness. It's time for us to go back and begin to pray for forgiveness for the rebellion and the iniquities in our bloodlines, so that we can be in full covenant with Yahweh. It's time for us to go back and check in our past what we've done that can still be standing against us, and ask for grace and mercy. I hope that in this parshas reading this week, we also remember that Yahweh is interested in ensuring that every area of bondage, every area of weakness, every area where we are struggling, is willing to come to our redemption. Once again, thank you. Shabbat Shalom.